Asynchronous programming. JavaScript is single-threaded by nature. There is no paralleling, only concurrency. Asynchronous programming is powered by an event loop, which allows a set of tasks to be queued and polled for completion. There are three idiomatic ways to write asynchronous code in JavaScript: callback-based, such as setTimeout; promise-based; and async/await, which is a syntactic sugar for promises. So, for example, here is how a file read operation may look like in JavaScript, and they give us this example. First, they give us for the callback base, this one. Then they give us another example, the promise base, and finally the async/await. So let's start with the callback base. We start with fs.read file, and here inside of the parentheses we're gonna have arguments. We're gonna have the file name. We're gonna have another parenthesis with error, comma, content, the arrow function. Here we have the curly braces, and here we have inside of the curly braces we have the if statement, if error, if this element. Then we have the throw statement, throw error. So outside of the if statement we console log the second element. In this case we console log the content. So the callback base, this callback is invoked when the file is read, which could be after a while. So code here will be executed while the file is waiting to be read. The second one is the promise based. Now we have fs.read file, and now we have the element file name inside of the parentheses. Now we're gonna chain it with the that then method. We have the arrow function. To the left of the arrow we have this parentheses with the element content, and to the right we have the curly braces. Right now we have the console.log content, so we're canceling this element here. We put a semicolon here. We close the curly braces and the parentheses of the that method, and now we chain the catch method. Again, we open a arrow function with the error element to the left side inside of the parentheses, and a curly braces to the right side of the arrow. And now we have the throw statement, the throw error. Now we close the curly braces and the parentheses of the catch method. We end up with a semicolon. Again, the code here will be executed while the file is waiting to be read. And finally we have the async await. Async function read file with the element file name in the parentheses. We have in the curly braces we have a constant declaration name content, and we are gonna await for the fs.read file with the element file name inside of the parentheses. After that we're gonna console.log the constant that we created, the constant name content, and this is the example. Yeah, this is a general overview. You can read more, be more specific about the async await, the promise base, and the callback based. The core languages, or the core language, doesn't specify any asynchronous programming features, but it's crucial when interacting with the external environment, from asking user permissions to fetching data to reading files. Keeping the potentially long-running operations async ensures that other processes can still run while this one waits. For example, the browser will not freeze while waiting for the user to click a button to grant permission. If you have an async value, it's not possible to get its value synchronously. For example, if you have a promise, you can only access the eventual result via the then method. And here you have the link for the then method. That is pretty much the promise, that prototype, that then with parentheses. Similarly, await can only be used in an async context, which is usually an async function or a module. Promises are never blocking, only the logic depending on the promise's result will be deferred. Everything else continues to execute in the meantime. If you are a functional programmer, you may recognize promises as monads, which can be mapped with the then method. However, they are not proper monads because they auto-flatten, i.e., they cannot have a promise inside of the angle brackets promise inside of the angle brackets capital T. In fact, the single-threaded model has made Node.js a popular choice for server-side programming due to its non-blocking input-output I/O, making handling a larger number of database or file system requests very performant. However, CPU-bound, computationally intensive tasks that are pure JavaScript will still block the main thread. To achieve real paralleling, you may need to use workers, and what they mean by these workers are Web Workers API. A worker is an object created using a constructor, e.g. worker with parentheses here, that runs a named JavaScript file. This file contains the code that will run in the worker thread. Workers run in another global context that is different from the current window, thus using the window shortcut to get the current global scope instead of self within worker will return an error. So yeah, pretty much. To learn more about asynchronous programming, you can read about using promises or follow the asynchronous JavaScript tutorial. And like I said, those examples that we saw right now are basic ones, but if you wanna go very deep into these concepts, you have this link using promises. As you can see, there is a lot of information here. And also you can go to this link, asynchronous JavaScript tutorial.